Shimano Deore FC-M6000 crank. This is a non-series MT210 crank. Hi guys, and today we will be swapping the Shimano MT210 crankset with this, a Shimano Deore MC6000 crankset. Both of these cranksets have a 2x system, which means that you have 2 chain rings up front only instead of 3. Here are the tools we need to remove our crankset for a Hollowtech system in Shimano. We need a needle nose pliers for removing the preload cap, a 5mm and 6mm Allen wrench, a toothbrush, and grease. So let's start. And so the first thing we need to remove is these bolts. We use a 5mm Allen wrench for them. You loosen them alternately so that your left crank arm doesn't get broken. And after that, we see this preload cap. It is only plastic, and so we can buy a tool for this. But if you don't have a tool, you can use a needle nose pliers. Just be careful, since this is plastic, this might break. And after that, you can loosen it by hand. There. Now, we can pull our crankset all we want, but this won't come off. There's a plate here, a plastic plate, right there in the clamps, in between those gaps in the clamps, and I just push that up. Let me try to use needle nose pliers for this. There. Once this thing is lifted up, we can pull the left crank arm out. And now we can derail the chain from the smallest chainring or whatever chainring you are at. Make sure it's fully derailed, as we can see there. And now we can push on this edge on the spindle of our crankset, and it just slides out. Give it a bit wiggle and taps to make it come off. There. Our right crank arm is now out. And now we can remove the pedals. And for mountain bikes, some very expensive good quality pedals use Allen wrenches in the back to get them off. But cheap pedals will use a slot like this one so that you can use a wrench in. So I'm going to just remove this with an Allen key. This is the side where the chain goes on. It is a normal thread. So we can loosen it counterclockwise if you look from the pedal's view in the front here. And we can hold the pedal so that it doesn't fall off. And the left pedal's out. We can put the crank arm there. Next, the right pedal for the left crank arm. This left crank arm is reverse thread, which means for you to loosen it, you need to do it clockwise. And your pedal's out. And this is a Shimano Deore MC6000 crank. This is a non-series MT210 crank. And this Deore MC6000 crank is lighter. And they have the same size of chainring combinations. This one has a 36 at the biggest and 26 at the smallest. And that means that you can still climb quite easy without having a very large cassette in the back. So The next thing we do after removing the pedal is to install these pedals in here. But you need grease on the threads. Grease the threads of the pedal so that they won't get stuck in your crank arm. Just use a toothbrush to coat the threads with grease. Both pedals. You grease both pedals. After greasing those pedals, if you still have a bit of grease left, we can also put some grease on the threads of the crank arms. Only a little bit. There. Now we can install the pedals. This pedal, if you see a pedal and it has either those grooves here or grooves there, that means it goes on the non-drive side, which is this side which only locates this crank arm, not this. So this is reverse thread, which means to tighten it, we loosen it. I'm gonna get my 6mm Allen wrench. I'm gonna tighten this. Now we can do the right side. And sometimes pedals also have letters. If it's L, that means it's left. If it's R, that means it's right side. And this right side, it tightens clockwise, like a normal thread. As you can see, I'm turning the Allen wrench clockwise. Now I'm going to tighten it. There. Once it's all tight, we can now install it on the bike. And now we can install our right crank arm on the bike. As we can see, this is why they call it a Hollowtech system. The bearings here, you can see through it. And now, before we install this, we need to put some grease. Make sure your hands are clean so that there's no dirt going into those bearings. And grease up the spindle. Putting grease on the spindle helps to make the bottom bracket bearings last longer. And also, it helps reduce noise. Remove any dirt that is in the grease. And also put grease on the splines here. Now we can install it. And now we can install the crankset. Start with the drive side crank arm. Just slide it through that hole and give it some pushes. After that, we can put back our right crank arm. To put back our right crank arm, make sure this tab here, there is a hole in the spindle here. If you can see it right there. That is where this plate has a pin in it, inside it, as you can see. I don't know if you can see it there. A small pin that pins it into there to prevent this crank from coming off. We install it like this, with this blade going into that thing, into that hole. and then pushing the cap down. After pushing the cap down, we can now install the preload cap. Grab a needle nose pliers or the preload cap tool if you have any. And make sure to grease the preload cap as well. There. And also grease the threads inside those spindles. Those threads is where the preload cap threads in. And we need those to be full of grease so that they don't get stuck in it as well. Now we can screw these on by hand. And if you get grease all over your hands and your crankset, you can just clean it off. Now that it's threaded all the way in the most as we can grab the needle nose pliers. And when you're using needle nose pliers here, make sure when you put it here, make sure to still try to push it out like this. That helps this needle nose pliers from slipping across the plastic and making it rounded. Do not tighten the preload cap too much. And now we can tighten the pinch bolts. Only use the 5mm and make sure to tighten it alternately as well. After that, we can tighten it down fully. Make sure to tighten this evenly. And then put the chain back into the chain ring. And here's a trick. If your mountain bike or road bike is equipped with a rear derailleur, this thing here, you can push it for this to go there. But since this is a mountain bike derailleur, it has a clutch switch. And this clutch switch helps it be more frictiony. When you turn that clutch switch off, I can push it much easier. So if you have this switch on your rear derailleur for Shimano brand, you can turn this thing off and you can push this all the way and you can rail it on the chain rings. Pedal to fully secure it. And that's it. That's how you install a crankset on your bicycle with the Hollowtech II system from Shimano. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.